Hello, my name is Suri, and I despise drama. However, it appears that the things you despise the most in life are the things that are the most likely to happen to you. So, here's my story. I grew up in a little community in West Detroit and was a happy kid until one day everything changed. My mother thought it was time for her to go and pursue another career in another state. And why not? My mother has always been the most hardworking and sweetest person I know. She's professional and ambitious, as well as gorgeous and compassionate. In my opinion, she was the most amazing person on the planet. Even though it would be difficult for me to move to another city and leave my friends at school, I told her that it was fine since I didn't want to be in her way accomplishing her goals. She has always tried her hardest to make me happy, so I should try my hardest to do the same. It was the source of my amazement. My mother looked at me regretfully, bent her head, and muttered something I didn't understand. I begged her to repeat what she said, and there it was, the final shock of my life. My mother looked at me and said she couldn't take me with her. She claimed to be relocating to another city, but I am not. Do you know what's even worse? She informed me that I would be relocating to my father's home, and she gave me all of the necessary paperwork. At the age of 15, my mother abruptly relinquishes custody of me, and I am forced to live with my father and his family, whom I despise. My mother was the one I adored the most, but she's suddenly the one I despise the most. She let me down so badly. How can it be the people you care about the most are the ones who hurt you the most? I couldn't help but despise her and speak about her badly in front of my friends and professors, but none of them seemed to care and offer an opinion. So here's what happened next. I moved into my father's house, and he was surprisingly nice to me. I was convinced he was going to embarrass me in front of his other kids. However, it was the first time in my life that I saw affection in his eyes. Jason, his son, was not allowed to mistreat me. I had no idea what was going on, but months passed and my life returned to normal. But I was so angry that my mother didn't call me, even after I began to suspect the situation. A person cannot transform like that in a matter of days or months. So I decided to look into the problem myself because I needed to know why my mother had vanished. I had been blaming myself for months, believing that I was the reason she couldn't fulfill her goals and that she had chosen to live her life without me. But that didn't make sense to me. Why? After a few failed tries, would I give up on locating her? It was on a Saturday morning while I was still sleeping that I discovered the other turning moment in my life. My phone rang, and when I looked at the screen, it was my mother's number. For a brief moment, my heart jumped out of my body. What exactly is this? Is it a dream? Is it possible? I quickly picked up the phone and exclaimed, "Mom!" To which she replied, "I love you, and I'm sorry this is happening, but I can no longer do this. Please see me in the hospital right now." I leapt from my bed and dashed to the hospital to visit my mother without pausing for a second. She was clenching on machines and appeared fragile and unusual. I couldn't stop crying when I learned that my mother had been fighting liver cancer on her own for several months and that she pretended to be moving out to protect me. All of this hit me at the same time and I felt very vulnerable. It was the last time I saw my mother, and I'm grateful I got to hug and kiss her for hours till the end. But now, years later, the only advice I give you is to never make any decision without first listening to others and learning about the circumstance. People love you the most can sometimes be the ones who hurt you the most, because they appear to love you the most.
I constantly mention that I attended architecture school in my videos, to the point that it may appear tasteful to some of you. But I haven't really provided a clear picture of situation I've learned and I retained during my 4 years struggling toward an undergraduate bachelor degree in architectural science. I post a lot of having graduate university, but really, I don't have much to show for this. This degree doesn't mean anything. I don't even know where it is. It's somewhere at my parents' house. It neither represents my accumulated knowledge nor my ambition for architecture. It merely serves as a reminder of how many years I can endure hating myself. True, I've forgotten a lot of what I learned after over 10 years, but even at the time, I didn't have much faith in my ability to pursue the industry when I decided to fully commit to YouTube and content creation. I mistakenly think that if I completely fail and only make 10 cents a month, at least I'll have architecture to fall back on. But the truth message was, please let's do this work. I'm not interested in pursuing career in architecture. I hate it. I want to make them animations, please. Architecture wasn't really plan B. It was more like plan L. So when I say truly appreciate your support of my work and allow me to self-sustain from my videos, I really mean it. Thank you all. That's really awesome. So, how much did you retain from architecture school? Oh, let's see why. Alright. Well, I cried at least 17 times. I remember one of the first lectures. We have our profile shot of all of us for not knowing what this structural element is properly called. Anyone know what that is? Right there, in the middle of the room. What that's called? A post? Nope. A pillar? Wrong. A beam? Nah. A vertical beam? No. One more try and fit my shoe to one of you. A structural vertical beam column. No. It's called a column. How do you guys not know this? Gosh. I'm pleased my tuition paid for someone to mock me for enrolling in a program to learn about subjects about which I have no prior understanding. Form follows function is the most important thing I learned from what constitutes a good building design. The nature of architecture is to create spaces that are based on people's interactions with them. The building's overall design should relate closely to the intended function or purpose of spaces inside it. If you construct a structure in the shape of an origami paper crane and submit it to a professor for feedback, they will calmly tell you it's crap and then spit on your grave because you no longer align to them. Even though seeing a paper crane building may appear cool and Instagram-worthy, it's unlikely to sit at a structure. You got awkward corners everywhere, making awkward rooms for people to fit into, which means a bunch of waste space and wasted construction materials and costs. So, what is even going up here? It's just a tall, empty space? Or are they awkwardly shaped single rooms that screen every story until you get to Sniper Tower? How do you even get up there? Standard elevator don't move dynamically, and stair won't fit without the engineering threatening to place a bounty on your head for this ingenious design. Simply put, if difficult to construct, it's probably a lousy design, whereas a paper crane can serve as inspiration. Architecture is much more than just interesting visual concepts. It's a museum in Toronto called the Royal Ontario Museum. Every chance they get it looks like this, and you might be thinking, oh, it's cool, right? It's got some very unnatural shapes, and it's interesting how it superimposes on the surrounding structures. It stands out as a very touristy, but that's all, it did stood out. Once you go through architecture school, you never look at buildings the same way ever again. You know how much my professors hate Rome? They took us on a field trip to the Rome to show on its design during the tour. Wow, look at all these awkward corners. Wow, look at all this wasted space. Wow, look at this useless hallway that leads to a dead end. Wow. They are brutal. But they were right. Some people might feel like square and rectilinear design buildings are basic and boring. But really, it's those kind of spaces that usually feel the most comfortably in. What the hell are you gonna do with a spiritual room? Where does your door go? How are you going to arrange your furniture to fit without having customized them? Are you gonna have curved glass windows again? Remember, form follows function, and the engineers and construction workers have your head on a bike. You don't think about how a structure will look before cramming all of the necessary rooms inside. Of course, you bear in mind your overall space constraints. However, you must design from the inside out. An exterior will finally take shape, and finding the best arrangement in relation to intriguing forms is what distinguishes good architects from paper crane designers. Top views of the spaces, part and views of spaces as you were cutting through it, and elevation walls are available. Standard scales always include inside views. When showing drawings from 1 to 73 is not typically a scale. People understand this part of the roof of a building is called a parapet, and it's quite really annoying to draw in the cross-section. Either you drew your drawings on a presentation board by hand, or you did it on a computer and spent $90 to print it. Starving artists and starving architecture students get along, and avoid using glue guns for your models. It doesn't dry nicely and sometimes leaves those spiderwebs glue bits as mentioned before. Keep the engineers in mind. You have to make your design stand. If you think a 20 or 20 meters room can hold up without any columns, enjoy having your ceiling collapse. Exterior walls are much thicker than you think because of insulation flooring is much thicker, and west-facing windows give harsh lighting because of sun bathing, which can slightly be mitigated with overhangs. But north or south-facing window give diffuse and more comfortably lighting. Always account for accessibility, and design ramps need a slope of about 1 to 12 symmetry is cursed. It's not necessary to have 2 stairways that lead to the same place. I have the impression that these are primarily used for prom shots and lastly for at least that is all I think of right now. Or is this door should be open awkward, you get trampled and indirectly kill someone in the future. Now, here's a part of the video when I try to see the bright side of things and recognize the true lessons I learned, because the difficulties were required for me to grow as a person and end on a positive note. However, I hate architecture school and blame it for my insomnia.